So that was it. I decided I had to take it real small. So what I did, I remember a few days after I was watching the TV and I heard somebody say on a biblical program, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And then when I heard that, that was when I decided that I'm going to make a camel. So I stole my mother's needles. When I stole the needles, I remember my mother wanting to sew some clothes and she couldn't find the needles. And then she said, have you seen my needles anywhere? And I said, and I held the needle up. And she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm making a camel to go through. And she says, make sure his neck goes through. So what I did, the camel that I'd made, I'd actually, it was a very small camel, but it wasn't quite as small as what I wanted it to be. So he was like cramped into the eye of the needle. Because what had happened, I'd made his neck too long. So I showed my mother the needle and she looked at it like that. And she says, the camel's got no room. So I continued. And I noticed that as I was sculpting away, I had to try, my hands were moving. So I realized then I had to keep my hands as still as I possibly could. So I started training my balance and my dexterity. And then my mother was telling me that I should keep my hands really still, hold my breath. And I started holding my breath like that. And then she'd hold my wrist and I held my wrist like that, and I thought, and I could feel that I was getting more dexterity. And from then, after that, I decided that I had to please my mother, because my mother was getting kind of angry, saying that camel is not small enough. So what I did, I used to lock myself away all the time. Every night I'd lock myself away. I didn't go out much. I just stayed in the bedroom. And then she came in and she said, you've got to create the smallest artwork ever. You must make work so small that nobody can see it, because that's what's going to happen when you get older. Your name is going to get bigger. So from there on, I knew that I had to do that. When I went back to school, the teacher used to go on, because of the fact that I'd absconded, so it was almost a nightmare, because she started again by telling all the kids about me, and telling them that I am the consequence of failure. I'm an exhibition of failure. So it was horrible, because back in England they had a way of humiliating you which is different to the way they do it now. I mean, if they don't humiliate you like they did back then, it's just the very way they used to speak to you. It was like the one teacher in particular used to look like the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. And she had a way of speaking. It was like, you are disgusting, and so is your work, and all the children in the school need to know, because I will not tolerate this illiteracy. So therefore you will be an exhibition of failure. You are the consequence. And it was horrible, because I was only a young lad at the time, and she used to have a way of walking I'll never forget. She used to hold her head like this, because she probably went to etiquette class when she was very young, and her head had been etiquetted. So it was like, I cannot move my head because my neck is etiquetted. It was quite terrible, because she I remember once I was talking to this lad who was sitting next to me, and just talking to him, how kids do. And there was one occasion where we had to play, with the toys and stuff. It was like time for the kids to get to know each other, so we had to associate with one another, And I remember having a little toy that I picked up. It was one of those wind-up toys, and it had wheels on it, and this horrible teacher came along and grabbed it away from me, and she says, "That one does not belong to you. That belongs to Bradburn." and dragged it away from me and gave it him and gave me one with no wheels on it. But I didn't mind, because my dad used to give me a cotton reel with a bit of string on it. So that was a luxury to me, to have a little truck with no wheels on it, you know. So I was playing with this truck, you know, and then this my classmate Paul Bradburn grabbed it off me, and he was pulling it, and as he pulled it, I loosed it, and he fell and hit his head, you know, and he started crying. And then she came over to me and said, "Right, I've witnessed your insult on Bradburn. I'm now going to take you to the headmaster. You will be severely punished for this." She took me to the headmaster. When I met the headmaster, he looked like Father Christmas. But he was a jolly man, and he said to me, "I'm not going to cane you because I know you haven't done anything wrong." And then he said a strange thing to me. He said, "The reason why I'm not going to cane you is because I like jazz." So he was into jazz music. Now, he showed me a book with Louis Armstrong and Ezra Fitzgerald, and he says, "I like jazz, I'm not going to cane you, I know you haven't done anything wrong." So I thought, well, I'm going to get in trouble more often, you know. And he was just telling me that, you know, that he knew, he understood, he knew that I had learning difficulties, because he said he knew that I couldn't communicate properly academically. So all he done was gave me some candy and says, "Look, you know, I know Mrs. Adams is not treating you well. I know all the kids are against you. I know that, you know, you're the only black kid in the school. I know that it's going to be hard for you, but I don't care because I like jazz." So I can understand that, you know. So, and then I remember as he was talking to me, he says, "Right, but I have to do something now." And he got the cane. I'll never forget this. And he got the book, and he says, "When I hit the book, you make a noise." So he hit the book, and he says, "Come on, make a noise." And I went, "Ouch." So what happened after that? He opened the door, and as he opened the door, there was a wicked witch. The teacher was waiting like that. And he opened the door, and he said, "I haven't finished with him yet." And shut the door like that. And then she took me by the hand, and then after he opened the door, and then he says, "Right, come along, come along." And then Mrs. Adams, the witch, I call her the wicked witch, she held my hands like that, and then she started taking me back to the classroom, pulling me along the corridor. And I'll never forget this teacher as long as I live. His name is Mr. King. He was a really nice man. I remember as the door opened up, and then he says, "Come along, go," and he gave me all this candy, put it in my pocket. And then as I was walking off, he went like this. So I looked back, and as I looked back, I could see him going. So I'm thinking, this man has made my life a little bit better at school, because, you know, the whole school was against me, because, you know, it was like, because this teacher had gone round the whole school telling the kids about me. Now, when I started school, she didn't even know I had learning difficulties, but she assumed it, and her assumption became a reality because it just happened that way. And the nightmare started even more, because she used to take me in front of the class and in front of the blackboard and give me a piece of chalk and ask me to write down sums and basic arithmetic, which I couldn't do. And what she decided to do was to deliberately drill it into me that I was illiterate. So she done a good job of it, because what actually happened, that was it. I failed. So I became a failure academically. I failed because she said it, so I became what she said. So when I used to go out in the playground, the kids started on me, you know. There was like, so the kids in England have a way of humiliating you. It was like a chant. It was like, because it's a way, it's the history, it's part of their background, you know. It's sort of like a na, you know, and they'd like all sort of walk around in a circle holding hands, and they'd be sort of just humiliating you because